When I saw the curtains in my living room fluttering through the window, the ones I had sewn myself, I thought maybe the wind had found its way inside. But then I noticed something else. There was a pair of shoes on the porch. Men's shoes. Worn out, muddy, and definitely not my husband's. That's when I knew something was terribly wrong. It's strange how silence can feel loud. That evening, I stood outside my own home, clutching the grocery bag so tightly that my fingers went numb. I wanted to believe it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe one of my in-laws' cousins had stopped by. Maybe my husband had told them they could stay for a night. But deep down, my heart already knew. Back when everything seemed normal, I used to call our home my little heaven. We'd moved in 2 years ago, a modest 2-bedroom house on the edge of Lahore. Nothing fancy, but it had the kind of warmth you only get when you've built it with your own hands. The curtains, the little flower pots, the teacups I bought from Liberty Market, every detail felt like a piece of us. My husband Saad was a quiet man, the kind who'd rather fix a broken bulb than talk about what's breaking inside him. I used to think that was strength. Maybe I was wrong. His parents lived only 15 minutes away. In the beginning, I tried my best to be the kind of daughter-in-law they could be proud of. Respectful, attentive, never talking back even when they criticized how I folded rotis or how I wasted electricity by keeping lights on in 2 rooms. His mother especially had this way of smiling while saying things that cut deep. "I just hope," she would say, "you remember this is Saad's family home too, even if your name is on the papers." She was wrong about that. The house was mine. I had bought it before marriage, using the savings from the small school where I taught English. It wasn't much, but it was my independence, my security. And maybe that's what she couldn't stand. Our life started changing the moment I got pregnant. Suddenly, everyone had opinions about what I ate, what I wore, how I should sleep. My mother-in-law would visit unannounced, armed with homemade remedies and endless instructions. At first, I was grateful. Then I started feeling watched. I remember one morning in particular, a Sunday. I was resting on the sofa when Saad came home with his parents. They didn't even knock. His father handed me a document, some property form, he said, just a precaution in case anything happens. When I asked why it needed my signature, his mother gave me that same gentle smile. "It's for family safety, Beta," she said. "We're just making sure everything stays within the family if something were to happen." I didn't sign. And from that day, something shifted. The visits became colder, the silences longer. Saad began spending more nights at his parents' house to help with their errands. When I'd ask why, he'd sigh. "Please, Alina, don't start. They're just family. Don't make it a war." The first real clue that something was off came the week after our baby was born. I came home from the hospital after 3 nights, exhausted, sore, but so in love with the tiny miracle in my arms. My mother-in-law insisted she'd cleaned up the house before our return. I thanked her until I realized what cleaned up meant. My cupboards were rearranged. My jewelry box was missing, and a spare set of house keys, the one I always kept in the kitchen drawer, was gone. When I asked her about it, she didn't even blink. "Oh, I gave them to Saad. You know how forgetful he is." But Saad hadn't asked for them. And that night, when I brought it up to him, he brushed it aside again. "Stop imagining things, Alina. You're just tired." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But the unease never left. Weeks passed. Then one morning, I came home early from the pediatric clinic. Saad was supposed to be at work. But there, parked right in front of the gate, was his father's car. Inside, through the window, I saw movement. At first, I thought it was Saad. Maybe his parents had dropped by. But as I stepped closer, I heard a voice. A female voice. I froze. It wasn't my mother-in-law's voice. It wasn't anyone I knew. I walked up to the door, trying to keep calm. The handle turned easily. Someone had left it unlocked. And that's when I saw her. A woman in her late 20s, dressed casually, folding clothes in my bedroom. My clothes. When she saw me, her face drained of color. "Oh, you must be Alina," she said softly, as if I was the intruder. I didn't answer. My voice wouldn't come. Behind her, I saw a suitcase open on the bed. My bed sheets had been changed. My baby's cot was missing. "Where's my son?" I managed to whisper. She blinked. "Your son?" That's when Saad walked in, holding grocery bags. He looked at me like I was the ghost. "Alina, what are you doing here?" "What am I doing here?" I repeated. "This is my house, Saad." He glanced at the woman, then at me, then quietly shut the door. "Please," he muttered. "Not like this." That night, I stayed at my sister's apartment. I didn't sleep. The sound of that woman's voice kept replaying in my head. Every explanation Saad gave on the phone made less sense than the last. "She's just renting a room temporarily," he said. "Your mother gave her the keys." She had nowhere else to go. But when I asked why no one told me, he fell silent. That silence told me everything. It wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. A decision made behind my back by people who believed I didn't have a right to the house I built. The next morning, I went back. The gate was locked from inside. I rang the bell, then knocked. No answer. Finally, the curtain moved. Someone peeked through, not Saad, not his parents. The same woman from before. She didn't open the door. And for the first time in my life, I realized what it truly meant to be shut out of your own home. I stood outside that locked gate for nearly half an hour. The neighbors across the street, the old couple who used to wave at me every morning, watched quietly from their veranda. No one said a word. It was humiliating, standing there with my own keys that no longer worked, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it echoing in my ears. Finally, I pulled out my phone and called Saad. He didn't pick up. I called again. Still nothing. Then I messaged him, "I'm outside." "I know she's there. Open the door before I call the police." That got his attention. He called back almost instantly, his voice trembling between fear and frustration. "Alina, please don't make a scene." "You'll regret it." "I'll regret it?" I said, my voice breaking. "You gave away my house." He sighed, that same heavy, dismissive sigh that used to end every argument we ever had. "It's not what you think. She's just staying there for a while." My mother said, "Your mother?" I interrupted. "Since when does your mother get to decide who lives in my house?" There was silence. Then he muttered, "Look, I'll come by tonight. We'll talk calmly, okay?" But that night came and went. He never showed up. For 3 days, I didn't hear from him. No calls, no messages. I was too humiliated to tell anyone the truth, not even my sister, who noticed the dark circles under my eyes. All I told her was, "Saad and I are having some problems." But inside, I was unraveling. I spent my nights replaying every conversation I'd ever had with my in-laws, every smile that felt a little too tight, every suggestion that sounded more like a warning. And I realized something. This wasn't sudden. It was planned. The missing jewelry. The precaution papers. The way my mother-in-law insisted that family should keep the keys. It was all leading here. They didn't just want control. They wanted ownership. On the 4th day, I decided I couldn't wait anymore. I went to their house. My mother-in-law opened the door, feigning surprise. "Alina, Beta! You should have called. You know Saad's at work." "I'm not here for Saad," I said. "I'm here for my house keys." Her expression didn't change. "Keys? Oh, didn't Saad tell you? We had to let someone stay there. Just until her situation improves." "Poor girl, she was almost homeless." "Then why didn't you ask me?" Her voice softened, almost pitying. "Because, sweetheart, sometimes you overreact. We didn't want you stressing out, not after the baby." My throat tightened. "That house is mine, Ami. You had no right." She tilted her head and smiled, the kind of smile that could slice skin. "Yours? Saad is your husband. His parents are his family. What's his is ours, and what's yours?" "Well, we're one family now, aren't we?" That was the moment I stopped shaking. My fear turned into something steadier, something colder. I stepped closer, my voice low. "If you don't give me the keys back today, I'll call the police. And I'll tell them everything. The break-in, the stolen property, the trespassing." Her face stiffened. "You wouldn't dare." I smiled faintly. "Watch me." By the time Saad came home that evening, he looked like a man torn between two worlds. "Why are you making this harder, Alina?" he said, pacing the small living room of his parents' house. "They were only trying to help. That girl, her name's Hina, she's my cousin's friend. She needed a place for a few weeks. And instead of a hotel or your parents' place, you thought my bedroom was available?" "Please," he said, rubbing his temples, "not everything is a conspiracy." "My mom thought—" "Your mom thinks she owns me," I snapped. "And you let her." He looked away. That silence again. Always silence when I needed words. "Fine," I said, standing up. "If you don't move her out, I will." That's when his tone changed from guilt to anger. "You think you can just throw people out? That's not how families work, Alina. You're selfish. Always have been. My parents were right about you." Those words hit harder than any slap could. I walked out. The next morning, I went to the police station. Not to file a case yet, just to ask what could be done if someone occupied your house without consent. The officer listened quietly, then asked, "Do you have ownership documents in your name?" I nodded. He glanced at them, stamped and signed. "Then it's simple," he said. "You have the legal right to reclaim possession. We can issue a warning." That evening, I arrived at the house with 2 officers and my sister by my side. Saad's car wasn't there, but Hina was. When she opened the door and saw the uniformed men, she froze. The officer spoke gently. Madam, this property belongs to Ms. Alina. You need to vacate or present legal documentation for your stay. Two don't have anything, she stammered. Saad said it was fine. It's not, I said firmly. Pack your things. Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't know, I swear. His mother said you moved abroad. That was the final twist of the knife. As she left, suitcase dragging across the tiles, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Control. I walked through every room, touching walls that suddenly felt both familiar and foreign. My baby's cot was still gone. My photo frames were turned face down. There were new curtains, a new scent, someone else's life lingering where mine used to be. But at least the space was empty again. For now. That night, I locked every door, every window. I even changed the locks the next morning. And just when I thought I could finally breathe, my phone buzzed. A message from Saad. You shouldn't have done that. You'll regret embarrassing my family. Followed by another from his mother. You may have the papers, but remember we have blood. Blood always wins, I didn't reply. But I knew one thing: this wasn't over. It was just beginning. The next few weeks passed in silence, the kind that feels heavy, like a storm waiting to break. I tried to rebuild some kind of routine. Woke up early, made tea, cleaned the same spotless counters, and pretended my hands didn't shake whenever the doorbell rang. Because deep down I knew it wasn't peace. It was pause. Saad hadn't come back home since the day I reclaimed the house. But his absence didn't bring relief, only questions. Where was he staying? Who was paying our bills? And why was I suddenly getting strange calls from unknown numbers late at night? Calls that went silent the moment I said hello. At first, I thought it was just paranoia. Then one evening, as I stepped outside to collect a package, I saw it. A car parked right across the street, engine running, headlights dimmed. Inside, someone was watching the house. When I stepped forward, the car pulled away, slowly, deliberately. The next morning, I decided to go to my lawyer, a kind woman named Farah who had helped me handle the property papers during the purchase. After listening to everything, she leaned back in her chair and said, Alina, what your in-laws did wasn't just unethical. It's criminal. I just want my life back, I said quietly. Not a war, she smiled faintly. Sometimes to get your peace, you have to fight for it. She helped me draft a legal notice, a formal warning to Saad and his family to stay away from the property or face trespassing charges. I mailed it that same evening. And that's when things got ugly. 2 days later, Saad showed up at my doorstep. Not the guilty, pleading husband I once hoped would return, but someone colder, angrier. He stood there with a folded piece of paper in his hand and said, You think you can humiliate my family and walk away clean? I crossed my arms. You humiliated me. You stole from me. You let strangers live in my home. He threw the paper onto the table. That's a divorce notice. I didn't speak. Didn't move. The word echoed through the hallway like a scream. He continued, You wanted independence? Fine, you have it. But don't expect a single rupee from me. I laughed bitterly. I never asked for your money. I only wanted my dignity. He turned to leave, but before stepping out, he paused at the door and said something that still sends chills down my spine. You think you've won, but my mother doesn't forgive easily. That night, I barely slept. Every creak, every gust of wind made me sit upright, heart pounding. I started keeping a kitchen knife near my bed, not because I wanted to use it, but because I didn't feel safe anymore. A few days later, someone threw a brick at my gate in the middle of the night. No one was outside when I ran out, but taped to the brick was a note. You should have stayed quiet. The handwriting, I recognized it. It was my mother-in-law's. I took the note to the police, but the officer just sighed. Unless there's physical harm, we can't do much. These are family matters. Family. The word made me sick. For weeks, I lived in that house like a prisoner. I installed new cameras, changed my number, even stopped going to work for a while. And then one morning, as I was watering the plants on the balcony, a delivery man showed up with a box. No name, no sender. Just my address written in block letters. I opened it. Inside was my wedding album, torn page by page. On the last page, someone had drawn a red X across my face. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I called Farah again. I'm filing a case, I said, my voice steady. Not just for harassment, for theft, defamation, and mental abuse, she agreed. And for the first time, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like a woman who had finally decided to stop begging for peace and start demanding justice. The court process was long and exhausting. Saad's lawyer tried to twist every fact, claimed that I was unstable, that I'd fabricated the brick incident, that I'd turned Hina out on the street out of jealousy. But every lie only strengthened my resolve. One day, during a hearing, I caught Saad's eye. He looked smaller somehow, not the confident man who once promised to protect me, but someone drowning in his own pride. When the judge asked if reconciliation was possible, I shook my head. "Your Honor," I said softly, "some homes can be rebuilt. But trust, once broken, becomes rubble." It took months, but eventually the court ruled in my favor. Saad was ordered to return all stolen property and stay away from the house. The legal title of the home was reaffirmed in my name. No more loopholes, no more shared ownership. When the judge read the final order, I didn't cry. I just closed my eyes and exhaled, the kind of breath that carries years of pain out with it. Outside the courtroom, Farah hugged me. "You did it," she said. "No," I whispered. "I survived it." That evening, I went back to the house. The sun was setting, the same orange hue that used to fill the rooms when life still felt normal. I walked through every corner, touching the walls, the windows, the memories. Then I opened the balcony doors, let the fresh air in, and finally, for the first time in months, smiled. I wasn't the same woman who had once stood outside that locked gate, begging to be let in. I was stronger, sharper, wiser, because sometimes losing everything isn't the end of your story. It's the start of a new chapter, one written by your own hands, not by someone else's control. A few weeks later, I heard through a mutual friend that Saad's family had fallen into financial trouble. The house they tried to steal was the only stable thing they'd ever had, and now it was gone. I didn't feel joy hearing it, only closure. Because revenge isn't always about making others suffer. Sometimes it's about walking away without looking back. People say betrayal breaks you, but I've learned it doesn't. It reveals you. And once you see your strength, you never let anyone take it away again.